Hi, welcome to my YouTube channel, everybody. I'm going to be reviewing Station 11 today. I want to break it into more logical categories, but for right now, we're just going to do what I liked about it and what I didn't like about it. Um, okay, so starting off with the things that I liked. Miranda's performance and the story around her character and the story she's writing were both fucking awesome. Her performance was incredible. I forgot that I was watching a TV show when I was watching her. I was just like there with her in the moment as opposed to some other characters, which I'll get to later. And then the astronaut story that she's writing to like process some of her trauma or express it or whatever is really cool. I really liked it. I liked that it kind of wove its way through the entire show. Um, that it was just like a really important piece of the show. That was like both subtle and absolutely not subtle, but very mysterious, I guess. Um, yeah, and then also like an one element of Miranda's character I liked a lot was that she was just like really like a good logistician. Like after, I mean, up to her dying moments, she was logisticking, trying to save that other guy. Yeah, just trying to arrange shit. It's cool. And afterwards, after she died as well, her comic continued to like arrange things so that you know everything would turn out good in the end. Like the son comes back to the mom and whatever. Fuck, I don't remember these characters' names. Anyway, cool. The story of the show was pretty cool. I liked that it was told non-linearly. Um, I have some other thoughts on the story in my dislikes section. Um, but I did want to note that it was adapted from a book. So I don't know how much to credit the show for the story versus the book, but I'm just writing this review about the show and I don't feel like reading the book. So I'm just going to pretend that all the decisions that were made were the show's decisions. Um, cool. So, and then also the layering of um, different, like, mirrored moments in the show was cool. So, like, Kirsten and when Kirsten is like running after Alex and like screaming for her to come back, and it's interspersing it with clips of Kirsten, like, and Jeevan, their relationship. Um, I liked that effect of kind of just splicing in clips, and I liked how concise it was to express like, oh yeah, like throwback. This is what the character is kind of feeling. Pretty cool. Okay. Um, diverse cast was cool. Gay relationships was cool. Main character casually mentioned as bi was cool. Yeah, I liked that there wasn't a lot of like, ooh, you're gay, and like, ooh, you're bi, or something. So that was cool. And then the last thing is, I really liked how the different thematic threads were all kind of woven in very well, like with kind of like highlighted by the astronaut story. So like leaving and coming back, like this happens with tons of characters in the show. Um, example, and then for another example of like thematic threads is Hamlet as an interface for communicating emotions. The quote from the book, damage, then loss, then home. also thematically reflected in the whole show. Yeah, I liked how they handled themes. Good shit. All right, now what I didn't like, and let me pause the recording so that I just. Now I'll talk about what I did not like. So, number one, the pacing. Pacing of the show at first, in the first couple episodes, pretty good. I liked how they set up the mystery. Tension building was really cool. For example, the moment when Jeevan is talking to his sister on the train and she's revealing that there's a pandemic is about to happen. There was like a very long pause at some point where he's just like sitting there on the phone and Kirsten is looking over at him, and the long pause there was cool to like reflect on like, oh shit, like how would I feel in that situation, or like, oh, this reminds me of COVID, like let me, like sink into that comparison emotionally and stuff like that. These long pause moments in the beginning of the show were cool to set up tension, to let you think about the mystery a little bit, blah blah blah. Yeah. Also, like when there are these long moments of tension, I'm like thinking like, oh my god, like is something crazy gonna happen at the end of this, because this is so long, this is so much buildup. And like a couple of, that emotion of like, oh, is something gonna happen, also kept me engaged, kept me interested, whatever. But as the show goes on, I learned not to expect much after these long pauses. And so, sorry, I got distracted by some. Oh my god, is this a mouse poop? Oh my god. Okay, sorry. Mouse herd problem. I think they're just seeds though. Anyway. Yeah, learn not to expect anything from these long payoffs, or these long pauses, so I'm just like, okay. Like I'm just sitting there like waiting for the pause to end. And I guess like I don't know why I kind of stopped feeling like as much empathy for the characters, or like it just didn't feel like an engaging thing to do, to like sink into the empathy with what the characters were going through. Um I think, yeah, the downside of like the story beats being woven into the story over and over again, like coming home and whatever, is like I already spend time empathizing with those issues for these characters. So like if while I'm doing it over and over again, I just like stop being interested in doing it after a while. That's one theory about, why it stopped being impactful for me as an empathy device. Yeah, so by the end of the show, I noticed myself just like skipping through the pauses, because I was like, okay, like nothing crazy is gonna happen, like there's just long pauses for like not much reason, skip 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 until the characters start talking again, or until they like find something or whatever. But yeah. um Yeah, like moments where there is no dialogue, every take feels like 2 seconds longer than it needs to be. Or 2 seconds longer than it actually holds my attention or like provides depth to the scene. But yeah, uh, yeah. Another example of a moment with like the tension and like long pauses that I liked was when Kirsten meets Tyler for the first time. It was really interesting to like observe, oh, how does she interact with strangers? Like, is this how everyone in this world interacts with strangers? Is it just her? Like, and I'm also trying to suss out like, oh, is Tyler trustworthy? I don't know. Like doing it for myself, doing it through her eyes. That shit was cool. But there are like times near the end where characters are just like looking at shit, and like I'm not gaining any information from it. There's nothing to reflect on. I'm just like watching a character sit there and like, I don't know, have a little throwback to their own life. Um, I don't know. It was just boring at the end. I got bored. Okay. Next point. Some of the performances were not great. Um, and this actually, I want to set up like a larger umbrella category, which is things that pulled me out of the experience of the show. I mentioned in the beginning that Miranda's performance was awesome, and I was like super engaged anytime she was on screen. Forgot I was watching the show, but there were several other things. There were things in the show that really pulled me out of it and made me like, oh yeah, I'm watching a show right now that's like meh. So one of those things were mediocre performances from a couple of people, including the main character, which sucks because she's the main character. Um, Kirsten, I mean, I guess it's an ensemble cast, but she's sort of like set up as main character. Um, yeah, like part of some of the flaws with the performances kind of felt to me like the show was taking itself too seriously or something. Um, or there was just like too much energy from these characters in moments where I don't think they needed that. Like I hate to bring this comparison up, but I know like some of the responses to the new Star Wars movies were like, "Oh my god, Rey like has the same expression all the time." And I know people are being like sexist idiots towards that actress, and it was awful. But I do feel like this um actress also had the problem where like her expressions sort of like weren't like variable enough. It was just like either she's on or she's like off. And yeah, that definitely kind of pulled me out of it, and I was like, okay, this person is just like acting. Um and it kind of felt like the device where they interspersed flashbacks, which I thought was cool. I said was cool earlier. It sort of felt like they leaned on that to try to provide some of like do the emotional work of like expressing rather than having the character convey those feelings just like, I don't know, by their acting. Um, yeah. It's a little too I think this is like a little harsh on the main character, but I really, for whatever reason, I was like missing the depth in her performance. I sort of felt it in like one of the first episodes with her where she's doing her performance as Hamlet, and it's she's crying and it's interspersed with clips of her and Jeevan or something. That like I felt that there, but there were a lot of times where she's like running and screaming and um like wrinkling her brow and crying, and like I don't know, it kind of got lost on me in some of the other episodes. Also, something to note, these episodes were like directed by all different people. I think there's a couple where the director stays the same, but most of them are like a different director each time, which I don't know if that's common practice with shows. But maybe that's like part of why sometimes the show felt engaging and other times it really didn't. Or like why characters seemed engaging in some episodes and not in others. I don't really know. Although, as I said, Miranda just stays fucking solid throughout the whole show, so. Mm. Anyway. Okay. Um, yes, so another thing that pulled me out of the viewing experience was the score. It is so obnoxious, and I didn't really notice it at first. I guess it wasn't like in your face at first, or maybe I was just like, watching the show. I need to go back and rewatch it actually. I think that would be good to like get a sense of this stuff. But goddamn, in the last couple episodes, it is just awful. Like I think the worst moment was when they're coming together to do the final play, and these are characters that have all had their own episodes. They're all coming together with like all this shit that we've seen them go through, and they're finally all like together and going to communicate about it through the interface of the play, which is so cool. Like, I love that setup. That's awesome. But then they just throw this obnoxious, loud orchestral score over top of it, and it just totally like tramples over the complicated character dynamics because the score is like, feel emotional, we want you to feel emotion, and I'm like, like, let me just like listen to what these characters are saying to each other and watch them and watch their expressions and like really feel like what's happening between them. I can't do that when there's this obnoxious music playing in my ears. Like there's so many complicated things happening here. I feel like I need silence in order to like process what is going on between all these characters. It was really frustrating. I think the scene would have been so cool if there was no music. And like maybe I'll try to make a version of it where I cut the music out, but that sounds kind of hard, so maybe not. But like it was really disappointing. I'm disappointed. I would have really liked that scene to not have music. Okay, anyways. Okay, yeah. So another little example of a double whammy, bad score and scenes going on too long was the Jeevan birth coach scene slash scenes. I like the music was so in your face, like, wow, this is so beautiful, this is so magical, he's helping them give birth, da 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 da. And like, it was just like one after the other of like him being like, you can do it, da da da, oh, can I help you, da 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 da. Like, I got it. I got the character growth shit. They didn't, that scene went on like, I want to say like 4 or 5 minutes too long. It was such a long fucking scene. I did not need the whole scene. It literally, the only thing it was communicating was like, oh my god, he's like gaining confidence. He's like helping people. He's building relationships, whatever. You don't need a 5 minute scene for that. You need like maybe a 1 minute. Like, I don't want to watch a bunch of people give birth also. I mean, whatever. Not that it's like gross or anything. It was just kind of boring. I was like, okay, yeah, babies, I guess. Sure. Anyway, I just thought that was a goofy scene that I wanted to share. Let me see. What was the last thing? Confusing moments. Moments of confusion. Um, and I'm gonna have to explain this a little bit. Um, all right. The storytelling is nonlinear, and that combined with oh wait, actually never mind, let me see here. Yeah, sorry. Okay. So, confusing moments. There were a couple of moments in the show where I was just so surprised at the characters' decisions or like their explanation for their decisions that I was like totally pulled out of the experience. I was like, the fuck? I literally paused the show because I was like, this makes no fucking sense. And I was trying to walk myself through it, but I couldn't figure it out. Um, the main example I'm thinking of is the fucking children blowing up Gil, and the impression you get in that episode. I mean, that episode ending is horrifying. It's like, oh my god, these kids came and like blew someone up, and they fucking died too, obviously. Um, God, I mean, yeah, it's horrifying, and like, totally put that in your show, whatever. But the fact that like the next episode that addresses that, they're just like, oh yeah, they were just like acting on their own volition. Like, basically, okay, what we know up to that episode is that Tyler is a cult leader. He is taking kids into his cult. So the implication of that episode is like, oh my god, he's brainwashing them to be like suicide bombers, which is awful. And you're like, oh my god. So there's that, and then there's Tyler wants to kill the troop, because that's the conclusion that Kirsten came to also. So knowing these two things of like, this guy is training suicide bomber children and wants to kill the troop, is like, okay, wow, this guy is horrifying, scary. Like, I don't even, just like, So yeah, so that establishes this guy as like a psychopath basically. And then the next episode after the kids do this bombing is the episode about Tyler. So the whole you're going into it being like, "Oh my god, how the fuck did he become so messed up?" So you're watching the episode and you're like, oh my god, like he's becoming like super fucked up, whatever. He like he makes his mom believe that he died before running away. Like this, this is all, it just sounds so terrifying. And he sounds like a crazy psychopath guy. And so the next episode is Kirsten going to try to go find him and kill him. And you're like, yeah, good. He's like terrifying. And then she goes in there and she's like, hey, I'm gonna kill you. And he's like, wait, if you kill me, like, the kids are gonna keep killing people because they only did that because I wasn't there to tell them not to do that. And they started, like, making up shit with my, astronaut gospel stuff, and they came up with that. So if I'm not around, they'll actually do more of that. And I actually wasn't responsible for that. And Kirsten's just like, oh, okay. Like, she doesn't interrogate him about this. Like, there's no, like, I don't know, they just like don't give that moment nearly enough time. Like I just felt so much whiplash. I just spent like 1.5 episodes being like, holy shit, this guy's terrifying. He's psychopathic. Like, how could anyone ever trust him? And then they show this scene where he's like, yeah, actually, you kind of need me around. And then she's like, oh, okay, sure. Like, no. It just seems like his motivations do a complete 180. Like they set it up to be like he wants to kill the troop. He's crazy. And now they're like, oh, actually he doesn't care about killing the troop. He just wants to travel with them to get back to the Museum of Civilization. Okay? Like, can you give us more than like 2 minutes to like wrap our heads around that? Yeah, like they don't even really address his initial threat to kill everyone in the symphony if she doesn't let them join doesn't let him join the symphony to go to the like yeah on their route. um yeah, basically, like, to sum everything up, I feel like um the bombing of Gil and then the episode with Tyler kind of setting him up as like, oh my god, he's so fucked up. Those things had so much like gravity and momentum and were so heavy. So you have this like train that's like traveling really fucking fast, and then in the next episode where Kirsten confronts him and he's like, "Oh, like just kidding. Let's, travel together. Lol, there's nothing wrong." It's like the train is like doing a 180. It's like falling off the tracks cuz the turn was so sharp. And that was my attention when I was watching the episode. That was my engagement with the episode. I just felt like totally whipped around a corner, falling off the tracks. And they really should have like built in some more track and more turning time to deal with some of that momentum. And I mean, maybe it was intentional. Maybe they wanted the viewer to be like, "What the fuck?" But I think anything that like pulls a viewer out of the experience is probably like not what you are trying to do. Like I think that's probably usually never a good idea with a TV show or any kind of media. So yeah, that's my thought on that. That went on a little long. All right. Lastly, um, last moment of confusion. I guess there's only two that I had to talk about. When at like in the last episode, when Kirsten shows one of the Undersea kids the Station 11 book, um, the implication is like, oh, she convinced that kid out of being brainwashed. Which, like, come on, a kid who has been brainwashed for years is suddenly convinced out of it in 10 minutes by a stranger that they just met. That's a little unrealistic. But then, like, later on, you see the kid give the book to Tyler. So maybe they weren't convinced. But in both this example and the previous one, the show is kind of implying like a conclusion that is like very much one thing and then like totally going back on it in a later scene. Um which just feels kind of weird to me. I don't know. I don't like I have more complicated thoughts on like um implications in media and like the purpose that they play and like how they're resolved. Um and I don't really I feel confused about it, but the for whatever reason the way the show does it feels jarring. It feels more jarring than other shows. I guess most other shows, like if they imply something, the implication usually comes true. So I'm not used to seeing like the framing of a show imply something and then the show be like, just kidding, that was totally wrong. So yeah, that was weird. Yeah, let me know in the comments if you know about other shows that do this because I'd really be curious. I feel like most stuff I watch is like very obvious. Unless it's like, you know, a mystery where it's like, oh, there's red herrings and stuff. But that's not what this show really was doing. Or that wasn't, yeah, that didn't feel like the purpose of the show. Cool. Yeah, that's pretty much all I had to talk about. Thanks for watching this impromptu little discussion of the show, and let me know if there's any other shows that you would like me to review. I'm open to suggestions. I'm thinking about reviewing Don't Look Up, but I just read a really good review of that by uh, Astral Codex 10, which is a really cool blog. I'm not sponsored by them. I just think they're cool. I think everybody should check them out. Anyway, yeah. So I will see you when I see you.